Singapore is pushing for stronger economic growth, even as global protectionism intensifies. Trade and Industry Minister Gan Kim Yong says the economy could expand by up to 4%, and in good years, even higher. Currently, growth over the next decade is pegged between 2 to 3% per year.
There will also be times when the global economy will slow down and our growth will also slow down consequently. And therefore, that will bring us to between 2 to 3% per annum. However, we see opportunities to get a larger productivity lift from technology such as AI, robotics, as well as automation.
Singapore will intensify higher value-added industries like precision medicine and autonomous vehicles. Ways to help local startups grow and expand into new markets will be explored. Amid geopolitical uncertainties, Mr. Gan added that Singapore plans to expand its network of economic partnerships and free trade agreements. These, he says, will open up new opportunities.
Our network of FTAs also makes us an attractive destination for foreign investments and has enabled us to build a resilient economy and provides for good jobs for our people. We must double down on our efforts to preserve and expand our international economic space.
And to take us through Singapore's new economic blueprint, we have with us Manpower Minister Dr. Tan See Leng, who is also Minister in charge of Energy and Science and Technology, and also a member of the Singapore Economic Resilience Taskforce. Minister, welcome to the studio.
Hello, good evening.
Well, let's start with DPM Gan's statements in Parliament, as we heard earlier. DPM Gan said that if we do it right, growth can reach 3 to 4%. Now, what exactly then must businesses, workers, or even the government do to get it right, so to speak?
Well, collectively, DPM Gan articulated three strategic thrusts. The first, really strengthening on what we already have, as well as going after emerging sectors. So today, we are fairly strong in the aerospace sector, in semiconductors, in digital financial services, as well as in healthcare. And if we can continue to anchor, to really leverage on whatever deep expertise and talent that we have already developed, I think that would bring us to a next level. On top of that, for the emerging sectors, we are focusing on precision medicine. For precision medicine, it's expected to grow on a compounded growth by about 11% per annum, right up to 2035, where it would expect to touch about $300 billion US in aggregate. In those kind of setting itself, we have doubled down, whether it is in the A-Star, the RIE ecosystem itself. We are really going all out to pursue initiatives in that. Over at the second thrust itself, what we intend to do is to anchor leaders, global leaders here in Singapore, whether it's in AVs, whether it's even in space, and again in healthcare. Today, 8 out of every 10 biopharmaceutical companies, the leading ones, are really anchored here in Singapore. In the life sciences tools section, 7 out of 10 are here. So we intend to leverage on them and really build. On top of that, we will enable our SMEs, our local companies, our startups to capture that growth space. Then, of course, at the end, we have to continue to build on our fundamentals, making sure that the AI, the deployment of AI, the AI fluency is as pervasive as possible to achieve large swath of our population catching up that AI fluency. Then we're going to really adopt automation, robotics, and all of this, of course, taking into account our constraints, our sustainability, our energy needs, all that will be taken into consideration. So with that, we think, from the numbers perspective, 3 to 4% is achievable. Probably between 2 to 3+% will come from that value-added productivity push, because we're going for the high end, and 1+% will come from workforce, labor force growth.
Well, you mentioned the 2 to 3% as well, which DPM Gan said is the projected trend growth for the next 10 years.
Yes.
So why is this benchmark right for Singapore?
We're starting on a fairly high level already. And for us, in a lot of developing economies, people have sort of looked at us as sort of reaching a mature level. So I think growth in a very, very high end would be not that easy. We think that in the early years, growth usually tends to be a bit lumpy, but over the longer run itself, between 2 to 3% is achievable. Now, in good years, we are hoping to get a higher growth, 3, 4, maybe even 4+%, to catch up on those years that are a little bit more lackluster. But I think that generally, given the highly qualified workforce that we have, the talent bench that we have, and our openness, the connectivity to the whole world as a hub itself, I think that's achievable.
And then what kind of key levers, right, can Singapore use to then squeeze out that extra 1 to 2 percentage points to get that good year of growth?
I think it's collective. All of us working together. Obviously, we need our workforce, our population to come alongside with us, to have that adaptability, that nimbleness, that agility, and that willingness to learn. Because today, disruptions, accelerated pace of change and so on behooves us, all of us, to adopt this lifelong learning mentality. Importantly, our businesses must also learn to be adaptable, to be able to pivot and transform. And the government will constantly work at rolling out schemes, whether it is a productivity solutions grant, job redesign grants, to even helping companies, SMEs, embrace tech, embrace digitalization, embrace this learning of AI and adoption of AI. And we want this to be as pervasive as possible. Lastly, as we bring in top-notch MNCs here, we hope that many of the HQs will then have spillover effects that will continue to bring up and uplift all of our SMEs and our local enterprises.
Yeah, you mentioned being adaptable in this case, right? It is quite an uncertain time for a lot of businesses in Singapore. So we have things like the trade tensions, we have tariffs, we have global conflicts. So what is the Economic Resilience Taskforce doing tangibly to support companies who are concerned and maybe feeling a bit not confident about their prospects in this climate?
So again, I think we think in terms of trees, right? So first, the CERT task force, the Economic Resilience Task Force, the first strategic initiative is sense make. Because today, what's happening is that there are a lot of changes, a lot of volatilities, a lot of uncertainty. I think that sense-making part where we work very closely with the Singapore Business Federation to understand which are the sectors that's most impacted, which are the ones that needs a lot of calibration, a lot of support. I think that is what gives us that form of triangulation for us to then come up with very precise policies, moves and initiatives to help, sort of facilitate companies in those areas that are most affected. Then the second committee, which I co-chair with the tripartite partners, looks at workers, how to ensure that this changes, all these disruptions, we can actually help them to overcome these disruptions and not only just overcome, but really ride on a new wave. And at the same time, looking at the broader businesses that are impacted by these tariffs to see how they can adapt, how they can diversify, what kind of advisory that we can provide them in terms of navigating all these tariffs and the difficulties that ensue. So as a result of that, the second part then comes up, the second thrust comes up with a business adaptation grant, which initially would provide up to 100,000 for SMEs and all companies. So SMEs, the local SMEs will get about 50% of the grant. Those non-SMEs will get 30% of the grant. And then on top of that, the ERS, which is the Economic Review Strategic Committee, 5 subcommittees formed under that will look at overall our economic climate, the type of industries that we're in. We'll look at entrepreneurship to see what are the roles that are needed for SMEs to survive, to transcend, and to really go abroad. At the same time, also looking at sustainability solutions and generally consulting with different groups, having widespread dialogue and feedback sessions to see how we can really leapfrog using this crisis, so to speak, but finding opportunities in this crisis.
Yeah, all of that on the business front. But when we turn to jobs in this case, a very big concern for many workers is, of course, AI and the adoption of digital skills. In this case, how do ordinary Singaporeans, all of us who, let's say, especially the mid-career workers and those who are on lower income earning potential, how are they being supported in this climate, specifically with any new tangible initiatives or help?
Well, I can perfectly empathize and understand the angst and the apprehension that people look when they think about AI, because there's all this talk, all these reports internationally talking about how it would disrupt, how it would displace jobs and so on. But I think the first step is really taking that small step of learning and embracing AI. I mean, there are a lot of apps out there, there are a lot of tools out there that today any worker can just go in and use. So to that end itself, what we're doing as part of the National AI Strategy 2.0 is to have a broad group of creators, of AIs to be anchored here. And pari passu with that, an even broader base of practitioners. And with this group of creators and practitioners, we can then have as wide, you can almost say, evangelize to as wide a group of population to become users. So at different levels, from the time that they go into university at the IHLs, now courses, curriculum have been tweaked and modified to include AI. Coming out to, at the workforce itself, we have got multiple schemes, grants available for SMEs, SME going digital, to embrace modules with AIs, off-the-shelf solutions with AI for them to start using. And to the larger enterprise, we have even funded a broad-based, bespoke, individually customized solution for that broad enterprise under the Enterprise Compute Initiative. Likewise, on the workers' front, Skills Future comes up with a significant number of courses for them to upgrade themselves, upskill and reskill themselves. For those in the mid-career segment, there's also the Mid-Career Pathway Program, Skills Future Level Up, Skills Future Credit. To the entire workforce, what we've tried to do is to integrate them by providing an enterprise workforce transformation package, which I announced at Budget COS this year in March, of up to $400 million for enterprises to use, to transform themselves, and at the same time upgrade the workforce. At the same time, WSG has all this CCPs, the Career Conversion Program. We work with NTUC, the labour movement, through the E2I, and for placement. On top of that, NTUC, the labour movement, also has what we call company training committees. Again, funded them to the tune of about 200 million. So all in, if you look at the next 4 to 5 years, the government is committed to investing up to 10 billion in our workforce to make sure that they are ready. So the key thing is to make sure that this is as diffuse, as pervasive as possible.
Minister, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives with us. I've been speaking with Manpower Minister, Dr. Tan See Leng.